So now we are going to be reading the Odyssey, and this is one of those things that I think is a great for you guys to read at this age because so many of you have just read Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, and you're at the age now where this is kind of a bragging rights. We're going to be reading, I'd say, about 75% of the Odyssey, like whole books of the Odyssey, and when you get older, you can say like, "Oh, I read that," and you'll get questions right on Jeopardy late at night. So, here's some important introductory information that you need to know. We refer to the author of the Odyssey as Homer. We don't actually know if it was Homer. Homer is a blind poet, and the authorship has been attributed to him for both the Odyssey and the Iliad. For thousands of years, there are a lot of epics to blind bards throughout the epics, and so we kind of think that, hey, he's patting himself on the back about how awesome blind bards are. If you don't know what a bard is, it is like a poet, a singing poet. The Odyssey was actually passed down through the oral tradition, meaning that the story was told over and over again by word of mouth. It is set in the 12th century BC, known as the Bronze Age of Greek history, but it wasn't written down until 650, 750 BC, and it actually contains features of social structure and class structure of the Greece that Homer would have lived in. It was written in the Ionic dialect of ancient Greek. This area of spoken Greek would have been spoken in what is now known as Turkey. The Odyssey is considered to be a folk epic. Whenever we say that something is folk, it is of the people, so that's why we're saying that the story was passed down by generation like from people, but it still has a lot of the same features of an epic that we have studied in Gilgamesh. So this is an oral narrative poem, and it would have been recited to audiences, and at the time the type of like singing poets were known as rhapsodes. It features a hero who has great history or historical or legendary significance. In this case, it is Odysseus. In the Iliad, it focuses on a variety of heroes, particularly Achilles is talked about a lot in the Iliad. This one focuses entirely on on Odysseus. Has a very vast setting, and the next slide is going to show you exactly just how vast it is. I mean, we're going over huge chunks of the Mediterranean. The plot does involve supernatural feats, such as the involvement of gods and goddesses, and also feats of valor and of strength, the type of like big, brawny, manly things that you expect a stereotypical hero to do. We have supernatural forces through this. We don't have angels or demons, but we do have gods, particularly the goddess Athena has a hand throughout this epic. It is poetic, but it's very, very simple and very direct in style. Do not let yourself get intimidated by this, that you're reading this big, huge, epic poem that I'm going to give you. It is very, very straight and to the point in its style of poetry. And our poet typically just, objectively describes the hero's deeds and lays it out as it is, but we do have, the hinting of deeds of valor throughout. So this is what I'm talking about here with our geography. You can see Greece is kind of in the middle there. I do have my cursor. So here's Greece, and this is home base. Odysseus is the king of Ithaca, and he has to travel to Troy to take part in the Trojan War. And the events of the Odyssey are about how he tries to leave Troy and get home, and he goes to all these places before trying to get back home. Within Homer's style, you see this in both the Odyssey and in the Iliad. It has these 5 features. It starts out with an invocation, which is a type of prayer where we're asking the gods to help tell the story. Always very famous opening of the Odyssey, and hear me, O muse. Okay. Epithets are a type of descriptive phrase used to characterize a person. They're repeated multiple times throughout the epic, and the reason why is because they want you to remember them and associate that phrase with the type of character. So Odysseus is in one translation of the Odyssey. The epithets are translated as the wiliest of fighters, or he is the raider of cities, and it's repeated over and over again. A Homeric simile As you know, because you're a freshman in high school, a simile is a comparison using like or as, and you will see that Homeric similes, as named for Homer, are similes that are drawn out over a group of lines, and they are very, very descriptive and imaginative in their comparison. In medias res literally means in the middle of things, and the Iliad and the Odyssey both start in the middle of the action. We are actually smack dab in kind of the timeline of our story, and you'll see what we're talking about whenever we get reading this. And repetition is a very common form of or feature of poetry, and you will see whole chunks of text that are repeated throughout the Odyssey because they're trying to get you to see parallels between father and son, or get you to see understand how important an event is. In terms of key facts, the narrator of the Odyssey is considered the poet himself. There is very few references to like a first person, but it is intended to be the poet telling the story of Odysseus. He kind of hands over the reins to Odysseus through books 9 through 12, but he tells us like, and then Odysseus spoke, and Odysseus is doing a lot of talking for books 9 through 12. Like I said, the point of view is the narrator speaking in third person, but however, the narrator takes an omniscient point of view, telling us how gods or goddesses feel, how Odysseus feels. And then Odysseus himself, whenever he's narrating in books 9 through 12, he totally gives, what he thinks people are thinking. The tone is very much like celebratory because it kind of looks to the time of Odysseus and the time of the Trojan War. It's kind of like a good old days type of golden age archetype that we see, like, the time where men were men and we burned Troy to the ground and it was great. It's very nostalgic in its own way. It is past tense, and a lot of it is told in flashbacks. That's the one thing that kind of trips people up, is getting used to the timeline. In terms of the themes throughout this, you're going to see a lot of themes repeated, such as the concept of brains over brawn, the idea that your brain is worth more than your brute strength, which I think is fantastic for an epic, because we see so often in action movies of heroes that, are super strong and can fight really well and can kill a bear, but Odysseus is the type of guy that, he's pretty strong and he's really good with a bow and arrow, but he is a thinker and he's known as like the great strategist and things like that. You see often characters being tempted and what happens when those characters give in to temptation. And similarly, but not the same as reciprocity, the idea of people getting what they deserve, and reciprocity has a negative connotation to it. It's a type of punishment almost, or karma. And so keep these in mind as you are reading the epic, because these are the type of themes that you're going to be analyzing whenever you do an essay after we're done reading, because this is English Honors 9, and of course you're going to do an essay. So I'm going to pause this video here and let you get a drink, and we'll talk about the Iliad here in the next video.